studios in New York City. This is Charlie Rose.
Les Moonves is here. He is chairman and CEO of CBS. 8 years ago, he joined a network that, in his own words, was in shambles. He is responsible for turning the Tiffany network around by bringing in such hit shows as Survivor and CSI. He is considered one of television's most powerful executives. CBS has been on the air for 75 years and will celebrate with a 3-hour special airing this Sunday evening. I am pleased to welcome Les Moonves back to this table. And, of course, I have to say that, in fact, I work for him over at CBS 60 Minutes, too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me about the 75th anniversary. What are you celebrating? How are you going to do it? And how do you take 75 years of broadcast history and put it in 3 hours?
Well, the amazing thing is the array of stars that are going to be there, because when you look back at the history of CBS, going all the way back, it was a place of stars. So in that room on Sunday night are going to be the cast of MASH, the cast of Dallas, the cast of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, the cast of the Carol Burnett Show, and the great figures in news, too, Walter Cronkite, Mike Wallace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be a great celebration of so many great shows and such a great history. And under the direction and production of Gil Cates, who did so many of the Academy Awards, we have a spectacular special with live presentations plus a lot of great clips.
Right. When you look back, take a look at this. This is the man who founded CBS was William Paley. Take a look at this clip about the guy who 75 years ago bought a series of radio stations and turned it into the Tiffany Network. Here it is.
In September of 1928, 26-year-old William Paley, the son of a successful cigar merchant, acquired a string of 16 radio stations to form the Columbia Broadcast System. Through his singular drive and limitless imagination, he spent the next 6 decades creating the standard for which all broadcast entertainment soon followed. He brought stars like Lucille Ball, Jack Benny, Red Skelton, and Jackie Gleason to Hollywood and turned them into household names. The stunning success of those early shows paved the way for the instant classics CBS will forever be remembered by. Ed Sullivan, I Love Lucy, The Dick Van Dyke Show, Mary Tyler Moore, All in the Family, and, of course...
How you doing, Henry?
MASH.
When you know you're making selections that are going to have an influence on 20, 30, 40, 50 million people, you know, you feel something very exciting about it. And when something works because you had a good idea, ooh, it's great.
Uncompromising in his vision, William Paley's dream of transforming CBS into the Tiffany Network soon came true. And even in the twilight of his career, Paley's commitment to making good television never faltered.
It's fun, it's challenging, and it's, I don't know, it's part of that spirit, competitive spirit, I guess, that gives you so much fun and satisfaction when you win, and gives you such heartaches and gives you such depressions when you don't. That's part of the fun of the business. You're always reaching for something new.
Think about this. Those are the footsteps you're following in.
Absolutely, and they're very big footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, his genius was programming.
Totally, totally.
He brought the stars over.
He believed in stars. He believed in great programs, and, you know, he believed in quality, you know, and I think that was the mark of CBS then, and hopefully it's continued to now.
Yeah. You are a former actor, which we've talked about on this program before. You are a guy who was successful at Lorimar, then at Warner Brothers as a television executive providing programs. What was it that made you take an offer to go to CBS and run programming?
When I was at Warner Brothers, obviously we were a very successful company, and we produced ER and Friends and a number of hit programs. I think when you're on the supply side, the production side, you always want that job. You always want to be the guy who's standing at the board saying, I'm putting that show Thursday at 8 o'clock or Friday at 9 o'clock, and you want to compete because I think it's the highest form of competition. And ultimately, you're the guy who makes that decision, you and your team, and there's nothing more exciting.
Yeah. When you look at each year, take me through the process of shaping this season.
Okay.
How you decided on what you had and what were the risks you were taking.
This season, we came off a very good season where we had a lot of strength at various points in the week. Obviously, Everybody Loves Raymond was a big hit. CSI was a big hit on Thursday. Survivor, 60 Minutes, and 60 Minutes 2 remain staples in our schedule. We go through an entire development season, beginning in the summer, that goes all the way through, and we develop about 100 scripts, and we shoot about 20 pilots, and these pilots are shot January, February, March. And we look at the pilots, and we do research on them, and at that point, the tough work begins. Then we start molding our schedule. We decide what we're keeping, and we already know of these 20 shows what's going to fit in, and more importantly, where. We knew where our holes were. We had to take a couple of gambles. We moved King of Queens, which was a stalwart, on Monday to Wednesday night, one of our weakest nights. And we took Jag, which had held up our Tuesday night, and moved that to Friday. And the reason we did that, we felt like we had the strength to help Monday and Tuesday, as well as move these existing hits to Wednesday and Friday.
Will most audiences follow their favorite program?
Yes.
If you move it from Monday to Friday?
Yes.
They'll follow it.
If it has enough of a following and you let them know that it's going. In other words, you let them know where it is. A very interesting statistic. People, their favorite shows, be it CSI, be it ER, be it Friends, the most faithful fan still only watches that show 2 out of 4 weeks.
Is that right?
The most faithful fan.
So if you take, for example, MASH is one of the things that will be honored here.
Right.
Those fans would only watch it
2 out of 4 weeks.
2 out of 4 weeks.
So it's important to move them into the right time periods and let people know that they're there, but they will follow them there. And it's very interesting, those viewing patterns.
Mm-hmm. If you look at this season, CSI had offshoot CSI Miami.
Correct.
Is that the most prominent trend of this primetime season?
There are a couple of things. I think clearly crime drama has been very successful. Procedural crime drama, because we now have 2 CSIs. We have Without a Trace, also a second-year show, and to that we added a new show called Cold Case, and a show called Navy NCIS, which is investigative on a military level.
Whoever knew forensics could be so exciting
Whoever
for an
knew
audience.
Forensics would be the sexiest thing. By the way, an interesting trend. Now forensics is taught at many colleges because of these TV shows. You know, the other trend obviously is reality. I think the quality reality shows, and by that I mean the Survivors, the American Idols, have stayed and sort of become a staple in network schedules.
Now here's a fascinating story. Survivor probably, more than any other choice you've made, has been the most important in your 8-year career. Would you say that or not?
Very possibly. Very possibly. It certainly had the most immediate impact. You know, there were a few shows which we call game changers. Yeah. Millionaire was a few years ago, where it suddenly took ABC from last to first, and then it collapsed again. American Idol certainly did that from Fox, who was having a tough year last year. American Idol came on, made that network successful. And in the summer we put Survivor on. We were starting to move up. We were starting to build the schedule. But suddenly we had the hottest show on television. And when we put it on Thursday night, it suddenly changed the whole landscape of television.
Plus, it had great demographics, too.
Great demographics.
Which is something you were trying to build, too.
I have 3 teenage children. It was the first show that my kids came home and said, Dad, they're talking about a CBS show at the high school for the first time.
Has that trend continued for you in terms of being able to make some inroads in this idea that CBS skewed older than everybody else?
Well, we still skew older than everybody else, but we've proven that with CSI, which skews much younger, with a show like Everybody Loves Raymond, and clearly with Survivor and you know, shows like that, the reality shows, we're definitely getting a lot more of the younger people.
You have made this point, and I believe this point, and I want to understand it, that you have a lot more buying power, you as an individual, than your 19-year-old son.
Absolutely.
Why do we pay more attention to your 19-year-old son than your age group?
Madison Avenue has determined that 18 to 34-year-olds or 18 to 49-year-olds are a demographic that's very hard to reach, that it's the future demographic, that they are going to have more buying power. They assume that somebody over 50 is sort of set in their ways.
They know what they're going to buy, and they go back to the same old brands.
That if you've been using Crest toothpaste for 30 years, you're not going to change to Colgate because of some advertising spot. I don't quite buy into that. nor has the CBS philosophy been that.
But what is your philosophy now, that you can have both?
That's right. Once again, we sell 18 to 49 when it's advantageous. A show like 60 Minutes, no 18 to 25-year-olds watch that show. Yet, it has an older demographic, but a very affluent, well-educated demographic. So we're able to sell that to specific advertisers who want the older, more affluent, better educated demographic. So the idea is not just to be a slave to 18 to 49-year-olds, but to sell whatever your strength is.
You guys watch each other's performances. When you see the success of American Idol,
right,
you have to pay attention to it.
No question.
And you have to say, can we create our own American Idol?
Television is very imitative.
Right,
Everybody,
exactly.
A big hit. Survivor started a trend in reality shows.
Same thing with the Millionaire.
Same thing with Millionaire. Started with the game shows. The only problem is most of the imitators are not nearly as good as the originals. So at the end of the day, there were 20 shows similar to Survivor, but they weren't Survivor, and they died. So we repeat that, and we do copy each other, and hopefully tag on to that success.
I'm fascinated by what gut. You know,
right?
Is Bruckheimer? Does he have gut? This is a guy who brought you CSI. This is a guy who's got 2 hit movies, Pirates and something else. I've forgotten what it was.
And 4 good television shows.
And 4 good television shows.
Right.
Now, how do you explain that? Is it because he is organized? Is it because he has brilliant insights?
There's a lot of factors. Number one, you mentioned gut. I think absolutely. I think Jerry Bruckheimer, he always says he doesn't care about the critics.
Right.
He cares about the public.
And the critics don't seem to care about him.
That's right. And he can get all the bad reviews he wants. He's reading them all the way to the bank.
Right.
His gut touches shows that people want to see. Once again, we have bought into that, and we have 4 of his shows currently on our schedule, and they're all great shows. There are certain producers that just have that instinct and that ability to know what people want. Once again, he's a great executive, so he brings the right people in to execute those things. And he surrounds himself with good people, which is also another secret.
On my show recently was William Peterson.
Right. Star of CSI.
Star of CSI. But here was a guy that you have believed in for a while and looked for a vehicle.
Correct.
You know, do you have a list of actors that you've seen through the years and you say, I'll see the right property for this guy? And
there are a handful of those guys.
Peterson was at the top. Yeah.
Peterson was certainly at the top. Having been an actor myself, and a mediocre one, I could see a guy like Billy Peterson and say, if I could act like that guy, I'd still be doing it, So he was somebody who literally for 8 years in a row, I had a meeting with once a year. Billy, what do you want to do? And he'd say, I'm not interested in television. I'm not interested in television, until finally we got him to do a deal. He read CSI, or he helped develop CSI, and he did it. It was a home run. Anthony LaPaglia, star of Without a Trace. He's another guy I worked with many years ago. Brilliant actor, Australian actor. Once again, we found the property that he wanted to do. When I was at Warner Brothers, I had George Clooney through 4 or 5 failed pilots. He did little bits on different series until ER came along, and then it was a hit. So there are some guys you just believe in, and most of the time, hopefully, you're right.
What's harder, knowing what actor to use in what part, or knowing what product, what story idea, what series idea will work?
You know what? One doesn't work without the other. The most brilliant actor can't make a bad script work. He can't. And I've seen great scripts being trashed, tanked by bad acting. I think it really is, you'll often see a guy do 10, 12 pilots and it won't work. And then suddenly it's the marriage of the actor and the material that suddenly meshes, and you don't quite know why, and suddenly there it is. It's a hit.
What failed for you this season?
There's only one show that's failed for us. Brotherhood of Poland, New Hampshire. We launched 6 new shows, and 5 of them have been renewed for the entire season. Brotherhood of Poland, New Hampshire was David Kelly's new show.
Right.
And we knew going in, it was a bit of a long shot. It was about 3 guys in their late 40s, all overweight, living in a small town in New Hampshire. It was a little bit quirky. It was David Kelly's normal, brilliant writing. Wasn't the most commercial show. Up against Law & Order, and it sort of got creamed.
Sure. Law & Order is the most valuable. Is Law & Order or Friends the most valuable franchise in television?
I might argue with the CSI is the
CSI
up-and-coming one.
No, you would argue that.
Law & Order is amazingly successful for NBC. There are 3 of them. That's very important. Just like there are 2 CSIs. There's only one Friends.
How do you explain it?
You know what? They are procedural dramas.
An ensemble company.
Right. They're great ensemble pieces. The writing is brilliant in both CSI and Law & Order. They're well cast. They're well produced. They're well shot. And the public just has a taste for them. Look, Dick Wolf, from what I understand, is talking about Law & Order 4.
Yeah.
And we're talking about a CSI maybe someplace else.
Okay, but you said to me on this program on an earlier appearance that you might have made the same mistake by abusing the Millionaire franchise.
That's exactly
ABC
right.
clearly made the mistake.
That's right.
And you might have made the same mistake.
On Millionaire, absolutely. Right. It was, it had
push it out there, push it out there.
Uplifted the network, and you want to grab all the riches you can, and it proved to be a mistake. With the crime dramas, it's a little bit different because each one of them has a different character. CSI Miami is a very, very different show than CSI. Law & Order SVU is very different than Law & Order. The idea is to expand it and not overdo it, not kill the goose that laid the golden egg.
When you look at Bruckheimer as a producer,
yes,
is it, and you look at Peterson as an actor,
right?
Is it easier to sell television today to producers and performers?
No question about it. No question about it. There are certain people you point. Jerry Bruckheimer has opened the door because now every single feature film producer walks in our door and says, I want you to do with us what you did with Bruckheimer. And I said, well, that's not going to be easy. Jerry brought a lot to the table. There are a number of them this year, that are very successful feature film producers who want to get into television.
Okay, but is there anything about Bruckheimer that made him more likely to succeed in television than some other film producer who has a equally strong...
Well, no question. Jerry is a populist.
Right.
He really is. He's a people's guy. He also...
He goes for a mass audience.
He totally does. Plus, he had an extraordinary organization. He had a very good television department already set up. Plus, his operation, he brought a lot of the feature film... the people we had doing special effects on CSI were the same people doing special effects on Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that's right.
So
right.
He was able to bring that team to the table, which helped a lot.
The guy who created CSI, who was on this
Anthony
program,
Zeiger, right.
I mean, he said that was the most amazing thing. He and Peterson both said that Bruckheimer brought a quality and a look that they might not have achieved without him being in the room.
That's exactly right. Yeah. No question about it.
What do you see down the road? I mean, have you already greenlighted stuff for next season?
Not yet. Not yet. We're still in the development process. Yeah. We're in the process of developing the next 100 scripts, which will turn into those next 20 pilots.
And what does your gut tell you where we might be going? I mean, for example, are you surprised by the longevity of Survivor?
Yes, I am. We are about to begin Survivor 8.
I know.
As I told you before, I was surprised Survivor number 1 worked.
In fact, when they walked into your office and pitched the idea, you said, what are you telling me?
This is the dumbest idea I ever
heard. This is a cable show.
Right, that's a cable show, exactly.
Yeah.
But because it's so well done, the quality of it, that's why it's maintained. I think Survivor could go on for many, many more years. So you never really know what the trend will be. Right now, television has a golden age of drama going on. I don't think dramatic series television has ever been stronger in terms of the quantity of great shows currently on the air. With Law & Order, with CSI, with The Sopranos, Practice having a renaissance. Right. NYPD is still a very, very good show. Right. ER is still a very good show. I think it's a phenomenal time for drama. And comedy is not quite the same. I think we need
It's not quite the same, meaning that...
Meaning in terms of the quality.
In terms of popularity quality.
We're looking... We haven't had a breakout comedy hit in 3 or 4 years.
Since Raymond probably, wasn't it? Or something.
Well, Raymond 7 or 8 years ago. Malcolm in the Middle has come since then, which was certainly a very, very good show. And there have been certain singles and doubles, but no Grand Slam home runs.
But is that because there's no talent that's come along? Because you build comedy...
No, the talent is there. I don't think people are thinking outside the box. I think in drama, it was easy to do things differently. Easier.
Tell me where you think outside the box.
Survivor is thinking outside the box. When we did Failsafe with George Clooney, doing a live presentation, which hadn't been done in 30 years, that was thinking outside the box.
This is something George wanted to do.
Exactly. And George came to us with this idea of doing a live drama, like they did the old Playhouse 90s.
Did it
and it
work?
was a throwback.
Did it work?
It worked brilliantly. It was great. It was great.
But did it work well in every dimension? Did it work well in terms of audience? Did it
Ratings
work well in
was
terms of
very good, and the production was fabulous. And I have to tell you, as the head of the network, I was so excited that night. You know, you're there, and you're saying, gee,
live television.
If a guy forgets a line, you know, it's not like David Letterman or anything like that. This is the real deal. And it was so exciting when we pulled it off. It was great. It was great. So that was thinking outside the box. As I said, some of these reality shows are thinking outside the box. Survivor was a concept that was foreign to television. Even when you take a show like ER, when that first came out, that was thinking outside the box. It was a hospital show, but stylistically, unbelievably different. CSI.
Unbelievably different because of what?
Because of pacing, because of shortness of scenes, because of numbers of stories going on simultaneously, and towards the time frame they did it in. You know, it wasn't your traditional standard hospital show. CSI used techniques never before used on network television. Seeing a bullet going inside somebody's body with the detail that happens. It's truly phenomenal, very exciting.
Do you watch much television?
I watch as much as I can.
Because you're a busy guy. I mean, you know.
I like to watch, a couple of episodes of every new show on television, especially the competition. I like to see as many of our new shows. Some of our existing shows, after they're in their third or fourth year, I rarely see it unless it's something very special. Most of the time when I go home at night to watch television, I usually turn on ESPN.
Do you really? You're a sports guy.
I'm a sports guy, and it relaxes me, watching a basketball game.
Speaking of cable, there are many people who will say that the people who are doing the most outside the box are the people like Chris Albrecht and people at HBO. Now, they have more freedom.
They do.
Because they don't have to reach as larger audience.
Right.
They're on a paid channel.
Yeah,
they
it's
got other
a different
kinds
base.
of commercial considerations. But they can do more things, and it says something, and I'm not sure what it says, about giving creativity an opportunity to flourish.
Well, there are a couple things. One, once again, we are dependent on sponsors. Right. There is so much we can do in terms of language, in terms of violence, and in terms of sex, certainly. Chris Albrecht at HBO, and he does a brilliant job. He's a wonderful executive. With The Sopranos, he does things that we couldn't do on network television. In addition, he only does 12 episodes a year. And they cost twice as much as our average episodes. So
now, what does that mean? They cost $2 million an episode, or
more than that? Right. Our average episodes cost $2 million an episode.
So he's up at 4 or 5.
Something like that.
For something like Sopranos.
Something like Sopranos. That's my guess.
Yeah.
You know, that it's up in that, and they take 14 days to shoot, as opposed to CSI.
But it's primarily driven by salaries, isn't it? Corporate stars' salaries or not?
It's salaries. Once again, the expense for HBO, their base is on subscribers. In other words, subscribers pay to get those shows done. We are paid by advertisers. Very different thing. So they can afford to put the thing in as long as they're getting more and more subscribers.
What about advertisers? Are they back?
They're great. The advertisers,
what I mean by that is advertising demand. I mean, in other words, there was a time that everybody in your business, in the television business, was worried about a slackening of advertisers having the money to spend on
this
advertising.
Past May, everybody,
at the upfront, everybody was there.
Everybody was there, and everybody did extremely well. We had an extraordinary upfront that all the networks were up double digits, and it was a very healthy advertising climate. As we head into 2004, for television, the prospects are extremely good. Number one, we have a presidential race, which for television is very exciting because there's more money spent in the marketplace.
This may be obvious. What program on NBC would you like to steal?
What program? Law and Order?
Law and Order, of course.
Yes.
Because that's a big franchise.
Yes, exactly.
What of their new season? Which one do you think you wish you had?
New season, I probably wish I had. You know what? I'm pretty happy with the hand I have, but Las Vegas is a very good show. The show they have 9 o'clock on Monday night with James Caan is a decent show, and I wouldn't mind having that one.
Were you offered it?
No. No.
Is anything changing about, because you're number one,
right?
Do you get offered the best generally, or is that based on relationships and everything else?
No,
CSI, Bruckheimer can do one more and 1, 2, and 3.
Well, Bruckheimer, at that time, CSI, fortunately, it came to us. It had been pitched to other places first, so we were happy we were the ones that got it. What happened, when I was here in 95, we weren't getting the first crack at things. Now we certainly are. There is rarely a pitch that we don't get first, although now another factor comes in, and that's vertical integration.
Right.
For instance, there was a project this week that Universal was out pitching. Now, we wanted it. Guess who got it? NBC.
Because they now
just
own Universal.
bought Universal.
Yeah, right.
So when they wanted it and I wanted it,
Yeah, that's right. Now, how much is that going to happen more and more? I mean, you have Paramount.
We have Paramount.
As part of the
exactly.
Viacom family.
That's
ABC
correct.
has Disney as part of
correct.
the
Right.
the
And Fox
Disney
has
family.
and
Fox has Fox. Yeah.
Right.
So
to a certain extent, you will always give your sister companies sort of a wink and a first look. But there are shows.
You're not going to put on a bunch of bad programs simply because they're produced by you in-house.
That's exactly right. Judging Amy, a show produced by Fox for us.
Yeah.
Now, that's not really a Fox show.
Right.
It fits with CBS better, and they were smart enough to bring it here, and everybody's happy, everybody wins. There are certain shows that just don't fit.
But does this mean it's much tougher for Warner Brothers today to get a buyer for its program because each of you guys now have
Not at all. Well, first of all, they have the WB. Number
that's
one.
right. Well,
and
they do
number
have-
two, in a way, it becomes more advantageous for them since there's all this vertical integration. We buy from everybody. We buy from the best program suppliers, and that's the way you win. If you only buy from yourself or your sister companies, you're really limiting yourself.
I want to get to a lot of things, but let me do what's happening in magazine programming. 60 Minutes, 60 Minutes 2, Dateline,
Right.
2020 are staples.
That's correct. That's correct. They're staples. We're very happy we have them. Audiences are declining somewhat on them.
Across the board?
Across the board.
Because
Across
Dateline
the
used to
board.
be much...
Right. Well, there are less of them as well.
Right.
There are less Datelines.
Are there less 2020s?
At one time, I think there were
might have
like
been
4
one
on the
more,
schedule.
right.
Yeah, there may have been one more. I still think they're extremely important. They have lost some of their audience, and then part of that is because of cable. You're getting news from CNN and Fox News, and there are magazines all over the place. Look, 60 Minutes and 60 Minutes 2, we're happy they're still both doing extremely well. I'm sure NBC is very happy with Dateline, which still does solid, as is 2020.
Yeah.
They are staples, and they're part of the network fabric. Yeah.
Is CBS different in terms of gets? I mean, you see Katie Couric now doing a lot of primetime, an occasional amount of primetime stuff.
Right.
You saw Meredith Vieira do something on ABC the other night, but it's all about the most sensational story.
Correct. There are stories that Katie will go after, that Barbara will go after, that Diane will go after, that CBS doesn't have that kind of person, nor would it fit into 60 Minutes.
Right.
Would it fit into the form? I don't think 60 Minutes would have done. I know they wouldn't have done Jennifer and Ben. They wouldn't have done that interview that was a Dateline with Pat O'Brien, where they were cooking in the kitchen.
Right.
I couldn't see Mike Wallace cooking in the kitchen with Ben and J-Lo.
Right.
So it's certainly different. There are a few gets per year that everybody runs out and hustles, and everybody gets their fair share.
Are they guaranteed most part ratings winners?
Some of them are, and some of them aren't. Some of them do better than others. Some of them are disappointing.
Tell me what mistake CBS made with the Lynch story, when it had on the front page of the New York Times this memo.
Right. The only mistake that was made is the Lynch people, the attorneys and their representatives, were asking about all sorts of other things with a member of our news staff. About movies of the week and publishing.
It seemed like they were promising everything, including the kitchen sink, as you might say.
Yeah, I don't think they were promised. They were saying, look, we would like you to appear on a CBS News show. We have avenues into these other parts of our company, which we'd be happy to make available to you.
Were you embarrassed when you saw it on the front page of the New York Times?
Was I embarrassed? I wouldn't say embarrassed. I was distressed by it. I could see it. You know what? It's a fine line now. The thing we have to deal with in network news, and I know all the morning news shows are called news shows.
Right.
They're more entertainment than news.
And after 8 o'clock, it's all entertainment.
That's right. It's all entertainment. So the fine line to say, gee, these are hard news shows, we should only do that. I think the line has gotten finer and finer, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Once again, J-Lo and Ben with Pat O'Brien. It was called a Dateline. Dateline is produced by the news division. That wasn't a news story. It was, it was a celebrity piece.
Access Television, which may be owned by...
Right, which is owned by NBC. Right. And by the way, the interview was fine. I had no problem with the interview. But nobody should be criticized for stepping over the line. Yes, one of our network executives, our news executives, was a little aggressive.
Right.
But everybody's aggressive when it comes to them. You know, Jessica Lynch was promised a lot of things by other networks, so, you know, the line is very blurry.
Don Hewitt.
Don Hewitt.
A legend in our business.
Totally.
When you look at the pantheon of heroes in television,
Exactly.
Roone Arledge and Don Hewitt have been legendary producers.
Absolutely.
Don has agreed to do what?
Don is executive producer of 60 Minutes this season. Next season, the show will be executive produced by Jeff Fager. Don will still be involved with the show.
How will he be involved with the show?
He will be an executive producer emeritus, per se.
Can you define executive producer emeritus?
I cannot, because I'm not in the news division, but you know Don, his hand will be there. He has a role in CBS News for the next 9 years after this.
A 9-year contract?
I think it's a 10-year in all, which includes this year. He will be in that building. We expect him to be doing specials for us and still being very active.
But he's not the executive producer of 60 Minutes Sunday next year.
He won't be, well, he will be to a certain extent, but Jeff Fager will be the showrunner.
Is this hard for Don to take?
I'm sure it's hard. Look, Don is a genius. He is a legend. You said that he's a legend. He created 60 Minutes. He devised the Nixon-Kennedy debates. You know, he truly is one of the geniuses of news programming. It's hard to give anything up.
I'll tell you a story. Bill Paley. They had a mandatory 65-year-old retirement.
Right.
Bill Paley was supposed to hand over things to Frank Stanton when he was 65. The day he was supposed to do it, he went down to Frank's office and said, I can't do it. It is very hard.
It is very hard.
He had created the company, so that's very different from somebody. But it's very hard to give it up, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
No matter how, I mean, you guys put everything on, I mean, you just sort of backed up the truck and said,
we wanted to show Don the respect he deserved and appreciation and not have him feel like we were pushing him out the door, which we're not.
So where's this going to end?
What do you mean?
I mean, we expect Don will be happy that somehow we can work this out.
I always want Don to be happy. Will he be happy? I don't know. It's going to be hard for him to give up being the guy who is running the show. And as of September of next season, it will be Jeff Fager. You know, and by the way, Jeff's one of his disciples.
Oh, exactly.
Jeff's a terrific.
60 Minutes too was produced in the image of 60 Minutes Sunday.
Totally. And Jeff Fager is not someone who is going to not show Don the appropriate respect. You know, he trained him. And you know, we all have a great deal of love and affection for Don, and you know, we want him around for a long, long time.
But just stop writing those memos.
it sort of goes with the territory, as they say.
Exactly. There's certain things you know.
That's right.
There's certain things about human behavior you say, I didn't mean to. I wish I'd stopped myself, but I did.
Right.
Exactly. It is
my
my nature.
And you know what? What makes him write that memos is what's made him a great producer. He's passionate, and he loves it.
And he loves his show.
And he loves his show, and it is his baby. It is his baby, and we respect that. As much as we'd like him to go quietly, it ain't going to happen.
And there's some things, at some point, you just can't worry about anymore.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
The morning television program.
Yes.
How is that? I mean, your show, your morning show, is the fastest growing morning program?
Fastest growing morning program. It is going up. It's up like 25% from a year ago. It's doing extraordinarily well. We try to change up the form somewhat. We have four hosts, plus we added Dave Price, and it's doing great. It's lively. It's I think it's the best show we've put on the field in many, many years.
In the morning.
In the morning. Yeah. And we're very pleased that we're becoming competitive in the morning.
Why do you think that is? I mean, was it just, what is it that made this, at long last, an effort that had a chance to succeed?
Well, we brought over Michael Bass, who was on the Today Show.
Yeah, right.
Who's a terrific
Trained
producer.
by Jeff Zucker, I guess.
Trained by Jeff Zucker. He was Jeff Zucker's number 2 guy there for a while and took over when Jeff left the show. He really knows what he's doing in the morning. Plus, I think we have 5 extremely talented, entertaining people.
Does this somehow say something? Did you think of this idea because you were the guy who created ER and you knew that the whole sort of a lot of characters doing something was a good way because different people could identify with different
I think that was part of it, but I think we created... Look, there are two very good shows on the air with a man and a woman sitting at a desk.
Exactly.
And if you try to be the third guy in as the man and the woman, you know, Andrew and I were... It was very funny when we were talking about it initially. We said, look, we don't want the show to be mad about you. We'd rather it be Cheers. So we used it in sitcom terms.
Yeah,
meaning,
right.
you know, there are different people.
Mad About You was Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt, wasn't
That's
it?
correct.
Exactly.
That's correct. It was a romantic comedy. It was two people.
Right.
You know, that's the Today Show and GMA. We are Cheers, where we have a bunch of people, very entertaining, appealing to different demographic groups, and we think we're doing something very exciting.
Letterman. Is Dave happy?
He seems to be. He seems to be very happy. He's going to be a father next month.
Oh, that's amazing. Isn't that
next
great?
month he's going to be a father, fairly shortly, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
He seems to be very happy with it. I think his work is as good as it's ever been. He seems to be content. I think last time on the show I had just gone through the renegotiation
exactly
with
right.
him.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And he really appears to be very content with the show, and, you know, our relationship couldn't be better.
When you think about, I mean, think more with me outside the box. I mean, this whole notion, I mean, you sit there. One thing we have here is consolidation. The best new evidence is NBC and Vivendi. You know, here's Universal joins the family.
Right.
That makes NBC more competitive.
No
makes
question.
it tougher.
No question.
In what way?
Well, they now have a production company
Right.
that's dedicated to supplying NBC first and foremost.
They now have cable.
They now have cable
operations.
Properties. Look, the Viacom cable operations have been unbelievably helpful for us.
In what way? MTV would be one.
MTV gives us so much promotional support. VH1.
Right.
Nickelodeon supplies our Saturday morning programming for kids. We have BET. You know, it goes across you know, there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay. You just signed a 5-year contract with Viacom. Let's figure out what it would take for Les Moonves to leave CBS. What would be good enough to take you away from CBS?
It's a very good question. You know, I thought about it. Do you want to go to a studio, run a motion picture division? I got to tell you, I think running a network may be one of the most powerful things one can do today.
But you mean powerful not because you can just sort of be powerful, but powerful because of what you can do.
That's right. That's right. I get to put on programs. I get to order programs. I'm involved with news. I'm involved with sports. I'm involved with entertainment. I have the greatest job in the world. I love what I do.
All right,
I love
stay
what
with
I
me,
do.
though. We need to go through this.
Okay.
All right. So,
whose job are you giving me? Michael Eisner?
Well, no. Oh, yeah, Eisner.
Right,
that would be attractive. That's running a whole big thing.
Michael Eisner does a good job of it. Yeah.
Here's the deal. What
Okay.
make you happy? We could concoct this. Aren't you already listed in some of these surveys as the most powerful man in Hollywood?
Yeah, Entertainment Weekly.
Entertainment Weekly.
Right.
The most powerful man in Hollywood.
Yes.
Would you want to run a movie studio?
I don't know. I've been offered those things. I like what I do. I like what I do. I don't think that's particularly, you know, a better job.
Do you want to be very, very, very rich?
Do I want to be very, very
I mean by
rich?
that hundreds of millions of
No,
dollars.
not
I don't
necessarily. Not necessarily. You know, I'm very comfortable. I'm paid very well.
Like Terry Semmel, for example, is going to be even richer than he's ever been before.
But Terry he took a bold move to go into Yahoo.
Yeah,
Look what he's done.
But you could have done that. You could have done what Terry Semmel did.
I could have. Maybe he had more guts than me. You know.
You could have done it. Is there a news story here?
No. No. That was quite a bold move. He did it brilliantly.
Now let's look at this too.
Okay.
How are you not exercising your power in a way that could have an impact beyond just entertaining us? Are there things that you ought to be doing or could be doing that would make a difference? You, with some, put 9/11 on. First of all, you took the film brilliant film made by those French kids, and put that on.
Yes.
And it was wonderful.
Yes, it was.
What else are you doing if we're sitting here taking an account of your stewardship as a citizen, not just as a steward of Sumner's stock price?
When Clinton was president, you know, I was active with his administration and worked on some of the things that he was doing.
This having to do with what? Violence on television? Or
violence on television. And I became sort of a consultant for the Clinton administration on general matters of the media and television. You know, and I became an advisor for them. And I felt that was important. And at one point I considered pursuing that as I went further into some sort of a political career and doing good work. One of the things you have to do as head of a network, and I take this very seriously, this job, is it really is a public means of expressing opinions. And I think it's real important to have a fair and balanced outlook on life by presenting things that can do good, then can help the human condition. I think the best way to do that is by entertaining people.
Yeah. Day and night, night after night after night.
When you look at a show like All in the Family, that probably did more for race relations than any other show, any other white paper that could have been on, any other news program that went on. And I think right now, through some of the shows on television, social things can be accomplished.
That's one of the things will be part, I'm sure, will be part of this 75th anniversary celebration. Carl O'Connor has since passed away. Rob Reiner's alive.
Rob Reiner will be there.
Yeah. When CBS takes an account of the greatest shows it's had back to the 75th anniversary, All in the Family, MASH, Mary Tyler Moore, Lucy. Think about this. This is the history of the Honeymooners. This is the history of Dallas, Larry Haddon.
The Waltons.
It's amazing.
Dukes of Hazzard. I mean, all kinds of different shows. All great.
Part of the culture.
Part of the culture.
Yeah. And when you look, there are many people who would say things like the good old days, the golden years of television.
Right.
Are you prepared to argue that television today is as good or better than it was at any time in its history? Or have we, because of competition, moving towards the lowest common denominator?
You know what? When you look back at some of these great shows, and there were a number of them, you have to remember, we're talking about decades and decades. You could pick out a handful of shows. And I would argue with you that if you look at the 90s and you look at the 2000s, you will find as many classic shows as you did back then. I think Everybody Loves Raymond will be a classic. I think 30 years from now, people will remember that show. As I said,
in the same way that Seinfeld is a classic?
Yes, Seinfeld definitely was a classic. Right. Friends is a classic. I think that will be remembered many years from now. There aren't many. But then again, looking back, there aren't that many. There are a handful. Yes, there were great shows. As I said to you before, I think in drama, there are more good shows on now than ever before.
They all share. I would be willing to argue the following, that what they best share is good writing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Jerry Seinfeld, I think Jack Welch said this in his book, or Jerry Seinfeld said this in one of the, I think Jack said this on the show. They were willing to give Seinfeld, my facts may be off a little bit here, America, but I've got it about right, $100 million to take another year.
$5 million an episode. Yeah. That's correct.
$100 million, Jerry.
And he turned it down.
And he said no. And he said no, because he said, I'm sitting here on Christmas Eve trying to write a script, which he did everything. He was involved in everything.
Right.
And he just said, the money doesn't make any difference anymore.
Right.
I am exhausted. and my point is that we forget how hard it is to be good, how hard it is to write great scripts. There is a finite amount of...
There's no question about it. People have no idea, when you sit back at home, the amount of work that goes into doing a single episode of a single television show.
We're forgetting the Andy Griffith Show, too.
Correct.
My brother from North Carolina, Andy Griffith.
Exactly. He's going to be there on Sunday night as well.
Oh, man.
And as a matter of fact, the week after, we have an Andy Griffith Show special reunion.
You bring it back where they are now?
They all got back together, Ron Howard and Don Knotts, and,
Yeah, these always do well, don't they? Most of them
do.
Some don't, but most of them do.
Absolutely.
Which is nostalgia or what?
Both. A couple of years ago, we did a Carol Burnett reunion.
Right.
The numbers were huge, but not only with people who were over 40 who knew the show. It was watched by 18-year-olds. So there was something about her, and whether it was in syndication, that brought people to television.
That would clearly be true about Lucy.
No question. We did a Lucy
Lucy's
special.
being seen somewhere on the face of the
Absolutely.
earth at
every moment during the day. There's no question about it.
Speaking of that, American television overseas.
Yes.
Am I right in assuming American television overseas is not doing as well as it used to be, or not?
It depends on the market. In certain markets, they have come up to the standards of American television, so they don't need us anymore. For instance, in France, there's now a quota on the amount of American television shows that could be on the air at any given time.
That's new, or is that?
I would guess it's 10 years old. But the quality of the work being done all over the world is now up to ours. In Spain, in Italy, in Germany.
Yeah, in Australia, they have their own 60 Minutes and all this
That's
stuff.
exactly right. You know, the influence in America. However, in the emerging nations, in Eastern Europe and in the Far East, we're having more success now in selling our shows. So it's going to.
That is because they haven't developed their own.
That's correct. Their industry is just beginning. It's really in very rudimentary stages. So they are buying more and more of our shows, A, because that's the best that they have, and B, because they want to learn from it.
The impact of cable.
Yes.
For years, people have said the networks are over. And every year, you guys at CBS and NBC and Fox and Warner Brothers just sort of say, yeah.
We're still the best game in town. Yes.
You're still the best place
to get mass audiences. Where else can you get the number of people, 65 million people to watch the Super Bowl, or the Academy Awards, or the Survivor finale the first year, watched by over 50 million people? Network television is still where there's more and more appointment television, where everybody has their 3 or 4 favorite shows.
Do they still do that, appointment television?
Absolutely, absolutely. There are
so
people.
If you talk about Friends or Raymond or
ER or CSI or The Practice, there are still people who set their clocks and say, I want to watch that show. I got to get home in time to watch that show.
What did you want to do this season? In the last 3 or 4 years, that you were too scared, too much at risk to pull the trigger?
I don't think anything.
In other words, you said yes to Survivor, even though it was a huge risk and you weren't convinced it'd be good. Burnett, or whatever his name is.
Mark Burnett.
Burnett. He's a hell of a salesman.
Yes, he is.
You know.
He's an amazing. I can't think of any show that qualitatively I really wanted to do, but for any reason that I was afraid of doing.
Yeah.
There's really nothing I could think of.
I would assume this is also true about you. You are more sure, even though you never can be sure. With experience and being there in the seat, you are more confident of your instincts.
No question about it. No
and
question about it.
That's an important thing.
Well, when you try things and they fail, you learn from them.
Exactly.
You examine, because you have your heart and soul in every show. You examine, why didn't that show work? Was it the wrong time period? Did I move it too much? Did I do the wrong kind of promotion? And you learn every week from that. And I think your batting average improves, if you're smart, as the years go on.
Jack Welch has been here. I've mentioned him several times. He's been here on my show a number of times, and Jeff Immelt as well.
Right.
They own NBC, and now they own Universal,
right.
and what used to be the USA Network.
Right.
And they talk about the possibility, as has ABC, as has CBS, of buying CNN.
Yes.
Is that going to happen? You think CNN will ever be sold by Time Warner to one of the 3 networks?
I think one day it very possibly could join with one of the existing networks. I don't think it'll be NBC, obviously, because they already have cable, as does Fox.
Right.
We explored it very carefully, as did ABC.
Right.
I know. Right now, logistically, it just didn't make sense.
Now, why does it make sense?
The valuation of CNN is a huge number for Time Warner.
Right.
The valuation of CBS News is very hard to get that out of the hole because it's part of a bigger network structure. There was no way to make that deal work in terms of what they felt their CNN was worth, in terms of combining it with us. And do you know what? Unless I think a merger was not a great idea, I think one day they're going to agree to sell it to somebody. I think that's the only way it can be done.
It is beyond valuation. I mean, was there an issue also of how can you work this thing out in terms of personnel and all that stuff?
There's no question about it. There's no question about it that comes into play. Which management is running it? Where do promos come? How do you divide the money? How do you set up bureaus in different places? How do you combine it? There are 1,000 logistical problems, which is why a merger of that kind is nearly impossible, and a purchase could work.
It's amazing when you think about Bill Paley going into cable, wanting to go into cable, and what it would have meant. His instinct was to go there.
Absolutely.
and then they lost. It didn't work as well as it might have been, and they didn't have the staying power to do it.
That's correct.
CBS News, where I work proudly.
Yes.
Dan Rather. If you know and talk to Dan, he's going strong.
He is.
Look, sound.
He is.
He would be in Baghdad tonight if there was a good story.
He's in California as we speak, covering the fires.
Right, there you go.
As we speak.
That is him. On the other hand, CBS News, evening news, has been third.
Yes.
Tom Brokaw is leaving the anchor desk, we think.
We think. It's a long way between now and stepping down.
That's right.
Right.
And we know the Don Hewitt syndrome, don't we?
It's a hard chair to give up.
It is hard.
It is, no question.
And especially if you love it as much as Dan does, and you give it up.
Yes.
You guys are not leaning on him to give it up.
Not at all. Not
you
at all.
want him there because he's good.
Yes.
And you believe what about the fact that CBS can be #1 in entertainment, but is not the top-rated evening news show?
That's correct. Look, it's not the top-rated evening news show. We still think it's going strong. We still think evening news is a good place to be. We still think Dan's the best guy in the business. We think he's the best guy we have at CBS.
And you don't change unless you got some either person or reason to change.
Well, why did the Brokaw announcement came because of Brian Williams.
Right.
Brian wanted that job, and certainly he deserves that job.
Well, that's how Rather got his job, by the way, in the first place.
Well, that's correct. That's what happens when there's other opportunity for people out there, and it sort of forced NBC to make an announcement about Williams and Brokaw.
Would you have gone after Williams?
What? Williams is very qualified. That's all I'm going to say. He's a very good guy. He's a very competent professional.
Yeah. But you went after him for the morning show, didn't you?
We talked to everybody, Charlie. We talked to you wouldn't believe the people we've spoken to.
You've got to have a lot of dialogue.
We've spoken to Katie Couric.
We tried to get her 60 Minutes, didn't you?
We talked
to her. You tried to get her
about
60 Minutes. I mean, you would have driven the truck over there and unloaded the money.
We did. Unfortunately, she didn't.
She had another truck.
No,
she had another truck.
She had another truck over from General Electric.
Yeah, exactly. A big truck.
But Don was talking to her at length, and it would have been great to have her over here.
But it is important to develop people in the pipeline.
No question about it.
At 60 Minutes.
Yes, and 60 Minutes
CBS
too.
Evening News, and 60 Minutes too.
There's no question. I think CBS has developed a great group of younger correspondents. A lot of them came out in the war.
Right.
Did some excellent work.
Right.
I think all the networks did. And out of that spring the next, that's where Dan Rather was. He was a reporter out in the field, and, he got noticed.
He made his mark during the Kennedy assassination,
That's
and then
correct.
all those hurricanes, and
there you go.
There he was. Now, is Walter Cronkite going to have something to do with his 75th?
Absolutely. He's going to have an important part. You will see Walter there. You'll see him as a presenter. It's going to be great. I mean, the people that are going to be there are going to be terrific.
Yeah. I think, I make this argument with my friends all the time, and I really do believe this, not because I'm, involved in the process of television and love it. And why wouldn't you love it? You get up every morning and you think about what's going on in the world and how do you create things that people will see. What a great way to
unbelievably
spend
exciting.
Your life.
You wake up
whatever, whether it's entertainment or news or documentaries or whatever. I also would argue, and I'm talking too much here, I would argue that there has never been such a wonderful range of options. Just think of all the great documentaries you now can see.
Absolutely.
You can see BBC America on television. You can see,
Anybody that says, because of vertical integration, that's been one of the criticisms, you're not getting enough creative choices out there, is nuts. Anybody that can't go home and find something in that 100 or 200 channel universe that they have, I think the range of programming is phenomenal. It's great.
Congratulations at CBS on your own leadership there, and also on a great network celebrating 75 years of being part of the American culture.
Thank you, Charlie.
Les Moonves for the hour. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.